just focus on doing good work. You can't control anything beyond that. It's incredibly difficult to engineer an exit or an acquisition or anything like that in a contrived way. You've got to do good work fundamentally.
Klyne Maharaj, the founder of Reflector Marketing and a specialist in startup positioning.
With over 8 years of experience helping tech companies, from Series A startups to major brands like Superballast,
Klyne focuses on helping founders perfect their pitch and raise capital.
beyond strategy, he's an MBA graduate.
The thing that has really opened my eyes is how African founders, generally speaking, are solving real problems. Going back to the things I'm talking about, like load shedding, or the fact that so many Africans are unbanked. I see career investors like career politicians.
Really? Yeah, you guys are doing things differently. Your playbook is totally
Trying.
different.
Yeah.
No, it is. For tomorrow, what would you tell them as founders on the continent to upgrade their mindset for tomorrow? What would that speech or that advice look like?
I'll tell you what it's all about, right?
Alrighty. How you doing, Klyne?
All good, Jay. Thanks very much for having me today.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for showing up. It's such an interesting one for me because you were my head boy, right? Or
I wasn't
just
actually
a
head
year.
boy, but I appreciate that you
Your
remember me that way.
Because you were supposed to be.
Hey,
You were
man.
supposed to be. Clyde,
no
you
comments.
were supposed to be.
No comments.
No,
But I appreciate
no
that.
comment.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no comment. No, Clyde. Yeah, thanks so much for showing up today.
Of
I
course.
really respect you in that light. Honestly, you were my head
Thanks,
boy.
man.
I like how you move. You've done an MBA. You've started your own business. You're a strategist. But before all that stuff, even before you were in my head of being like a head boy, who is Clyne? Right? Like, who is that like gent? Who is that gent?
Well, man, I mean, my family has shaped me, and my upbringing has shaped me more than anything. And the number one thing I'm most grateful for with my upbringing, and the thing that's kind of made me, is that having a super supportive family, that has really like backed me all the way, has given me opportunities they never had. Like, my parents didn't go to private schools. They didn't go to universities. My brother and I were the first people in our entire family, like a lot of South Africans of color, to go to university, to go to good schools, things like that. And just knowing that I had like a pretty unique opportunity in my lineage and something my parents never had, that is something that always gave me quite a lot of drive and good context in everything I've done in my life. Just knowing like I'm getting a shot my dad and mom never got. So make the most of it. That's kind of shaped so much of how I see the world and move through the world. And the other thing, kind of as it relates to my career and the things that I've been doing, is that I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. So between my dad and two of his brothers, they started two separate businesses that have essentially employed our entire family, all my aunts and uncles. They've put most of my cousins through school and university. And they grew up on a farm in Umzinto, which is like down the south coast, a sugarcane farm in KZN. They were indentured laborers there, aka slaves, 200 years ago, and essentially earned land back over a long period of time, over like 100 years. Apartheid ended, the land essentially became theirs. And so they grew up in a very humble way, but have immense drive and incredible work ethic. And so that is the example. That is what all I knew. That was reality to me. That's the thing I really try to like model myself on to the best of my ability. I don't think I hold a candle to any of their work ethic. Like, I'm always just aspiring to get there. These uncles and my dad, they have businesses that are, upwards of 30 years old. And these guys still work 7 days a week. Not because they have to, but they're hardwired that way now. They just know you've got to put the hours in if you want to stay in business and stay ahead. So I would say, yeah, those have been the probably most two fundamental parts of my background that have shaped me. And I think another one I just want to add to that is that I definitely have always felt, in some sense, like an outsider. I'll give you a small example. In primary school, I was one of two Indian kids in my entire grade, all the way up until grade 7. When I got to Hilton, it is kind of similar, and maybe that's like a shallow dimension to just be like a race group thing. But the kind of schools that we went to had strong, quite like English backgrounds, sort of very Western culture, that sort of thing. And so I was raised a Hindu, for example, and they went to like very Christian schools, for instance. And so that kind of stuff has also shaped a lot of my sensibility, and I love it. I like to embrace that. Like I don't, we all want to be unique and all of that. I never saw it as kind of a disadvantage. I always thought it was an opportunity to just be myself with fewer expectations of what or who I should be in the types of schools and stuff I've gone to, and I've tried to maintain that. I don't want to be like, now, for instance, I don't want to be like a dull suited VC. I want to just be myself. It's the same as the work I do. Like I want our creative to be standout. I want it to have a little bit of edge, to have a very honest voice.
Yes.
And that's, again, like kind of this outsidery mentality that I've always sort of had has informed that. It's in the music I love, the literature I love, the movies, the people I look up to, and really who I want to be. I just want to be me, and I'm very comfortable with that. So, yeah.
Talking about being you, right? So I did some stalking. Internet's a wild place, and you actually shared a few things that I couldn't find on the internet. So I didn't know that background about you. So I really, really appreciate that. Like wow, like I really, really appreciate that. But on your Pinterest, you've got tattoos, logos, cocktails, and Cape Town inspo, right? And you're a creative. Would you say that's your creative public brain? Is that your creative public brain?
It's quite an interesting one. It's like that is such an amalgam of my personal life and my professional life. So I could tell you immediately, cocktails is when we had a client called Mother-in-Law, a restaurant in Joburg that my brother actually started, one of my agency's first ever clients, and looking for best practice. Like, what is the coolest, best way to show a cocktail that doesn't look like a Cubana menu, and the Cape Town one is from when my agency did the brand refresh for Granadilla Swim. Another guy we went to school with, Adam Duxbury, him and his business partner, Josh Meltz, who's become a very good mate of mine. When we rebranded them, the big source of inspiration was, well, this is an authentically, not South African, but Cape Townian brand. So let's try find all the visual cues, that really inform that. A lot of the other stuff, though, definitely love tattoos, love men's fashion, branding. So yeah, in some sense, that does give a pretty good indication of the things that I love and sort of how I see things. What else did you find in your internet stalking? I'm quite interested.
Ooh, let's not go too fast. Let's not peel back too many layers. It's still early days. We've got a combo, but I've got some more things, Klyne. Don't worry, don't worry. But that's what I found on the internet. But what are you grappling with quietly these days that I wouldn't have sort of picked up from Pinterest?
I mean, quite honestly, at the stage that I'm at in my life, so I've been working for roughly 10 or 11 years. I became a dad a couple of years ago. I just had twins earlier this year. So
congratulations.
In like sort of thank you very much. In sort of the space of like 5 or 6 years, my life changed dramatically. So I started a business and sold it, got married, had 3 kids. And so the thing that you would never be able to pick up online is I'm grappling with my own ambitions at the moment and what I really need to achieve in my career. And it's, I think at the start of your career, when you're still finding your space and what you're good at and where you're going to excel, you're sort of just stumbling, one foot in front of another. You're making decisions. You're hoping they're going to kind of reinforce each other and get you somewhere good. Now with sort of this 10, 11 years of work experience, I can look back a bit more and go, okay, what worked well, what didn't, and what does the next 10 years of my career look like? Because it's no longer just about finding myself or what I'm good at. It's now got a much more fundamental purpose, which is I need to provide for a family, and I need to provide at least the type of life that I had growing up. And I grew up in quite a privileged way. Like my dad's business did very well. Like I said, he didn't grow up like that. His family didn't grow up like that. But we grew up being able to go to the best schools, best universities, go on overseas holidays, and have the odd luxuries in life that, the vast majority of people don't get to have. And I don't see those as superficial things. I see those as the things that shaped how I think and all of that. And now I'm at the point where I need to figure out how I'm going to give that to my family, to my kids. So that's probably the biggest existential thing that you'll never pick up online. It's like everything looks hunky dory. Everyone posts their successes, the things that are going well, the things they want people to see. But quietly, that's the thing that keeps me up at night, is how I'm going to do that for my family. That's the one thing. And then the other thing, which I think is almost equally important, is that if you've kind of been an ambitious person your entire life, and if you've sort of achieved, however you define achievement, you start to look at achievement and go, but what is it actually doing for me? Is it making me happier? Am I making more money? Am I more content? Is it fulfilling me like spiritually and emotionally? All those things. So that's the other lens I have, is how can I do the type of work that I'm excited to do, not every day, because no one is excited to do their job every single day, but most days. And on average, does it make me happy? And do I love the people I work with? And do I feel like there's a real mission behind our work? So those are the two things, what does achievement, success in the professional realm look like in the next 10 years? And very practically, how can I make the money to give my family the life that I want to give them? Those are the two quiet concerns, struggles, focuses for me.
Sure. To your second point around, providing for your family in a similar way that you grew up with, I think we had a little bit of a background check on what it would mean to, send your 3 boys to Hilton. We don't have to put the number out there. Like I just sat back in my seat and I was just like, okay, yeah, Klyne, you're gonna have to pull off some stops, which I definitely believe you will, because
Hope so.
Reflector, like, no, I think you will. You've worked with massive brands. You've worked with Superbalist. You've worked with, a number of brands as an employee, and then went ahead and said, okay, I'm going to start a business. And I think because you've seen what it takes to start businesses through your family, that entrepreneurial journey was already sort of granted to you, which is amazing. I think, I think it was like, 6 years ago, you wrote, I'm not too sure what I want to be, but I'm very sure that I want to start a business, right? And then you went and started Reflector, which wasn't just a brand agency, I think. I always saw it as your lens on how to tell Africa's story. What were you trying to prove or protect when you started Reflector?
Well, what I'm always trying to prove to myself is that I'm the guy that I think I am. Okay. I think we all have an image of who we are. And something so interesting about life that I've kind of just realized, as I've gotten older, is that the world will never see you how you see yourself. And so it's best not to worry too much about how everyone else sees you. You know how you see yourself. And if you have self-belief, you're probably in a constant battle between trying to be trying to be who you are and the guy you think you are, or the guy you think you should be. So I think starting the business, I'd kind of gotten to this point in my career. I'd worked at some great companies with some awesome brands. But I felt, like you mentioned, the one thing I'd always known just growing up in an entrepreneurial sort of family is that I wanted to start my own business. But it was like kind of nebulous, because it is just, I want to start a business. I have no idea what that business is. I even remember sitting down with the CEO of Superbalist, Luke Judakin, the co-founder, who was my mentor, early on in my career. He hired me as like a 22-year-old kid, took a massive gamble on me, gave me a huge shot to head up what was definitely the most exciting startup in the country at the time, on the marketing side. And I remember sitting down with him like a year or two into my career, and he says, what do you want to do when you leave Superbalist? And I was quite taken aback by that, because I hadn't expressed at all that I wanted to leave or I was going to leave, but he obviously understood. I was a young guy. I'd kind of been catapulted into this role. So he knew that I wasn't going to be there forever. And I said the same thing to him. I want to start a business. I have no idea what that is. And I remember we brainstormed it a bit. And this is like almost 7 years ago, 8 years ago now. He's like, fintech startups are really amazing and there's so much opportunity to scale and blah, blah, blah. So it took a long time to actually look at myself honestly and go, okay, if I'm going to start a business, it can't just be, I can't just be like, oh, there's sort of an idea here, or I want to start a startup for a startup's sake or whatever it is. I reflected a lot and I was like, well, what do I believe I'm really good at? And where is there evidence to say that I'm good at this thing? And it just came back to, I know that I'm good at taking very complex things and making them very simple and easy for people to understand. I know that I'm good at storytelling. And I know that I'm good at bringing together sort of a commercial and a creative lens, that like intersection of creativity and business sort of thing. Those are the things that I really excelled at. And I loved working with startups. And the reason I love working with startups is because unlike a big corporate, if me or my company created a strategy for a startup, I know that they're going to be able to implement it and roll it out without red tape, without 1,000 layers of permission. And, Global is going to sign it off. And so I always knew that startups is really the types of companies I wanted to work with because I could see my work being applied and I could see the actual impact of that work. So that is kind of what led me to have the penny dropping moment to be like, you're good at this thing, start an agency. But like everyone who has that idea, and there's so many people in the space that you've done that, when you say you're starting an agency, what that actually means is on day one, you're a freelancer and you're calling yourself an agency. And you're usually one
100%.
person with freelancers behind you or whatever it might be. So that's kind of what led me into that journey. And it all felt right because of the experience I'd had before that. Like you mentioned, I loved working with African companies. I worked with startups since day one of my career at MNC Saatchi Able. The account I was on was the Take a Lot Group. So always with startups, loved African companies, and just knew that there was an opportunity to give startups big agency quality work, but at startup prices. Simply because I don't have a big fancy office. I'm not inviting them over for a sushi lunch with Moe like 3 times a week and all the very silly things that big agencies do that just drive the cost up. And so that was kind of the insights I had to start Reflector. That's what got me on that path.
Sure. What a beautiful story, man. Like, that's a well expressed. You've expressed it in such a interesting way. Did you do public speaking?
I did. I've always loved public speaking. It's I
Yeah.
don't know where, how, why, whatever it is, but it's just like one of those things that from as early as I could remember, whether it was like speech and drama at Highbury or debating at school, public speaking in high school, it's just been like, I've always been drawn to it. I love it. It just like, it sets me alight. I know it sounds quite corny, but it does. It fires me up and it makes me feel good. So I've always really loved it.
No, I can see, man. Like, and you talk about strategy being your superpower. Like, you need to start talking about how public speaking is your superpower. Like, I'm even lit up just listening to you. I'm like, geez. But rolling up Reflector, right? So start the business.
Yes.
Don't sort of if I'm taking a stab at Reflector was a reflect like of you, like the value is that the name? Like, why Reflector?
Actually,
Just quickly.
man, I'll tell you quickly. The way I came up with the name was I've named so many brands and products and things throughout my career. So I'd always had an idea of the names that I was drawn to. I always knew that if I was going to start a business, I was going to choose a name that was deeply personal to me, even if it made almost no sense in the context of my industry. I love a band called Arcade Fire. They have an album called Reflector, which I think was one of like the greatest rock albums ever written. It's a work of art from start to finish. And the name comes from actually a cell phone or a screen. That's a reflector. It's a black mirror. When you turn the screen off, that's what it actually is. And all of our devices are actually reflectors in some kind, reflectors of who we are, of our businesses, all of that. So it is kind of like that double meaning that led me to the name. But it's interesting. You're not the first person to guess that it was, the route that you went down. So that's kind of how it came up with it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I thought so. But yeah, rolling up Reflector as a business, great, did well. How was that roll up into getting acquired, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
and I'd love to just, what was that journey like? What does
Sure.
it take? And what does that really look like from a day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of young agency founders ask me this question because it seems like, obviously the ultimate goal when you're starting a business. Quite honestly, though, it wasn't even on my radar. My focus from the very first client we got, the thing I always told myself is just do the absolute best work you can for the clients that you're dealing with, because good work begets good work. And that is something that was absolutely true for me. I mean, Reflector never did a single piece, and I mean this quite literally, not one piece of outbound marketing ever. And every single client we ever had came as a referral or from one of our clients talking about our work on LinkedIn, or me talking about the work on LinkedIn, or it coming from our company account. So I suppose in a sense you could call that a type of marketing, but it wasn't really like outbound. I wasn't reaching out to potential clients. I wasn't canvassing for businesses. And to quickly tell you what got the ball rolling entirely. And this is the thing that I really want any young founder to know, especially agency founders. So I decided I was going to start this business. And I remember thinking like, okay, I've got to do a few things. I've got to register a company. I've got to name it. I've got to have a website. I always thought, okay, I've got to have a website. When I'm sending out an email, whatever it is, we need to look somewhat credible. And what happened is that about a year before that, during the pandemic, a friend of mine, you also know, we went to school with him, Simon Ellis, who is the founder and CEO of Gem, the HR tech company. So during the pandemic, the company was still called SmartWage, Gem. And with my Superbulous sort of background, Simon used to always stay in touch and pick my brain about this sort of thing, because he came from like a corporate background, I think PwC. And long story short, during the pandemic, he's like, listen, man, I've just started this startup. I would love some advice on it. And because it was like during peak lockdown, I had more time in my hands. I had some capacity. So I was like, listen, dude, I'll do more than just give you some advice. I want to be able to work with you. Let's help figure this stuff out properly, put together a bit of a strategy to orientate you guys. Long story short, did that work. I couldn't get involved in the business. I had another job at the time and things that I wanted to do. Fast forward a year later, putting together the website for Reflector. This is before we had a single client. And I thought to myself, damn, I need to put some case studies on this website. Otherwise, we're going to look like, like a mom and pop shop from day one, which is something I definitely didn't want us to look like. So I just WhatsApp Simon randomly, like Wednesday afternoon. Hey, dude, listen, long time. Hope you're well. I'm starting an agency. I helped you with some work about a year ago. Do you mind if I put your company on our website as a client? Simon responded immediately. He's like, absolutely. By the way, we're about to go out to pitch this week to rebrand and reposition SmartWage. Would you like to submit a proposal? Obviously I wanted to, and obviously I did. And I sent it like as soon as, I think maybe that afternoon or maybe the next day or something. It was really, really quick, under 24 hours. Long story short, we won that pitch against bigger agencies, more established companies. Simon, obviously, again, with some trust in me, kind of took a chance. We did, I think, really good work for that company. We helped position them in a way that they still use today, by the way, Jay, which is like quite rare in my career. They're still all positioned around deskless workers and frontline workers, a lot of the language they use. And of course, we came up with the new name, Gem, and the brand identity. And because of the type of guy that Simon is, when we did that work, he was shouting about it from the rooftops, not just for Gem's sake, but also bigging up me and Reflector. And then people in his network saw that. We got work off the back of that. Then we renamed and rebranded Opus, which is a professional community for founders, which just launched a chapter in South Africa, a UK-based company. Off the back of that work, we've got Baobab Network as a client, because the founder of Opus, Sam Tidswell-Norrish, was an investor in Baobab. Baobab were about to kind of reintroduce themselves to the market in a sort of more established institutional type of way. And so that's how we got Baobab as a client who went on to acquire us. And what actually happened is that, like I said right at the start, just focus on doing good work. You can't control anything beyond that. It's incredibly difficult to engineer an exit or an acquisition or anything like that in a contrived way. You've got to do good work fundamentally. And so same thing with Baobab. We're like, let's shoot the lights out. At this stage, our team was bigger. We had about 5 people working on the project. And we got to the end of rebranding, relaunching Baobab Network. And the co-founder, Toby, he called me one day. He's like, let's have a chat. And he says, what you guys just did for Baobab Network is exactly what we should be doing for all of our portfolio companies, because you've given us a way to describe ourselves with more clarity and with better positioning than ever before. You've polished our brand identity so we look ultra professional and like what we actually are. And that's what we should be doing with the pre-seed startups that we invest in, because they suffer from a lot of the same challenges, great products, suck at explaining the product and positioning themselves. And that's what started the conversation. And ultimately that led to Baobab Dev on acqui-hire of me and my team, us going in-house, me taking over the accelerator, redesigning the accelerator program, and obviously taking over the brand and the marketing and all the comms around the business too. So I think to wrap that point up, one of my favorite, I'm not like a Steve Jobs fanboy, but I find myself saying that a lot these days, so maybe I am. And I I finally read his book, man. And that's a book that's been lingering around for more than 10 years or whatever. I was at the airport, so I had a long flight to Nairobi. It's like, cool, let me get stuck into this thing. And one of my favorite quotes in that book is that you can never join the dots looking forward. You can only join dots looking backward, right? Everything trying to join the dots looking forward is a guess. It's a forecast, and the forecast is an educated guess. And so when people say how should I run my agency to have it acquired one day or whatever it is, I can't tell people how to do that. All I can tell them is the experience I had and looking backwards and joining the dots now. And maybe there's something in that for people, maybe there isn't. But that's why I always go back to the one thing people can control, which is doing good work. You can't control really much more beyond that.
Brilliant. Yeah, you're so right, man. Like you should probably do a little quote, do good work and the clients will follow. Something like that,
And it's true. I
TM,
honestly believe it from
Klyne
the bottom
Maharaj.
of my heart.
Okay. Pitch me then Baobab. Pitch me.
Cool.
What do you do?
You're an African
Value
founder.
proposition.
I'll tell you what it's all about, right? You're a founder of an African startup. Okay. You're going to struggle with two things. The biggest thing is capital. Okay. It's a tough landscape all around the world for venture. In Africa, it's far more the case. You're going to struggle, especially at a pre-seed level, to get your first check. And that idea of first check is the space we play in. So I'll give you a comparison. If you, Jay, wanted to start a startup in Silicon Valley and you needed your first check, you could probably raise that capital quite easily from friends and family and from angel networks, because there are so many. There's so much capital floating around in those markets for a first check. That is simply not the case across the African continent. So founders struggle to get the first check they need to actually take something that's great and then build something meaningful. Okay. So that's where we come in at the most fundamental level. We want to cut the first check for African founders who cannot get that first check because of the environment that they're in. That's the first thing. The second thing is accelerating those businesses. And what we mean by that is, how can we help this business achieve two things? Get traction quickly and then fundraise to further that traction. Two very, very simple goals. And everything we do in our accelerator orientates around those two things, getting traction and helping them fundraise. And the way we do that, and this is now obviously using the Reflector IP and the way we used to do things, the first thing we do in our accelerator is position every single pre-seed company that comes through. For the reasons I've already mentioned, pre-seed founders, they usually built something great. They're incredibly knowledgeable. They know their space, they know their product, they know tech usually, but they're terrible at selling stories. They're terrible at sitting down in front of an investor and explaining why their product is what their product is and why it's differentiated and better than the alternatives on the market. And so the very, very first thing we do with every single company in our accelerator is help them nail their positioning. Because if you get your positioning right, it makes getting traction and fundraising far, far easier. So on the traction side, if your positioning is clear, you're more likely to talk to the right customer with the right message. That means you're more likely to obviously engage with them and get a sale. On the fundraising side, if you know how to describe your product and how it's positioned and how it's differentiated, you're going to make the job of the VC much, much easier, because they're not going to have to pry information out of you. They're not going to have to do a whole lot of additional due diligence on top of what they'd ordinarily do. So that's why our accelerator is so focused on those things. And the third layer we're adding on now that we've been building is this idea of distribution. And what that means to us is, how can we get your company, the portfolio company at Baobab, in front of customers, talent, and investors? That's what we mean by distribution, because those are the things that are going to make you successful as a startup. If you can attract the best talent, the people with the best people win. That we all know. If you get in front of customers, you're going to have traction. And if you get in front of the right investors with the right message, they're going to give you the capital to actually continue building and then ultimately scale the product. So that's really the pitch for Baobab Network. I know it's not exactly an elevator pitch unless we're going to the top of the Empire State Building, but that's what it's about. It's about giving African founders the first check they could never have, and giving them access to world-class support that they also ordinarily wouldn't have had access to. That's what we really try to do.
In my head, whenever I saw or thought about building a startup, it was always pizza, a whiteboard, and somehow Klyne Maharaj's garage that his dad allowed us to use, right? And that's what I always saw as startup like life, right? And then what else I thought of is, of course, Silicon Valley, and somehow someone's gonna just in a black bag send $1.8 million, and then we're gonna be on the Forbes 30 under 30, right?
100%. Cover of TechCrunch, the whole shebang.
Yeah, TechCrunch, and like all of a sudden we've got more merch than clients. Like, we've got merch already going around, with public speakers, so and that's the story, like the Y Combinator story. Like it's almost, that is the playbook. That is like, that's what you need to follow. And hey, it's done amazing. There's amazing companies that have come out of that ecosystem, like that changed the world. They're continually changing the world. Absolutely. Right? But with those inputs dictates how we build businesses around the world, right? And I think that has, done misjustice to the mind of African startup builders, I think. Right?
Yes.
And if you agree, which it seems like, then what are we doing wrong when building businesses in Africa? Like, to the point, like we've got the wrong inputs on like what it takes to build businesses. So then what are we doing wrong? What are you saying?
Firstly, I agree with you. I think that African founders looking at the path of founders in the States or Europe is setting the wrong expectation. And not in terms of ambition. African founders should aim to build companies as big as anyone else. But the journey is going to be very, very different, exactly like you've touched on right now. So what is the second part of the question?
So what are we doing wrong? Like, so
what are we doing wrong?
We've got the wrong input. So we've got the wrong inputs. So the expectation, which is, and I like the point you say, let's not dream to build the biggest companies in the world. Ambition isn't the thing, but the inputs on like, actually, what are we doing? What does it look like?
It's interesting. So, Jay, I don't think African founders are necessarily doing something wrong as a collective in terms of how they're building their businesses or how they're trying to fundraise, things like that. And this is not a cop-out. I think the single biggest challenge that African founders face is a perception challenge. And the reason I feel so strongly about this is because if you blow that idea up, it's actually true of Africa and Africans in general. We're a continent that's deeply underestimated. We're a people that are deeply underestimated. The Western world, and I'll just use the kind of the global North, the global West, that sort of thing, sees Africa as another sad headline in The Economist. Oh, war-torn this place, or political unrest there, or, some huge health crisis there. And Africa has a real perception problem and a real branding problem, you could almost say. So we do start off on the back foot. You could have a founder who is as brilliant or more brilliant than an MIT grad, building a startup that's going to have a greater impact on more lives. But if they're in some like small town in Cameroon, a big shot investor in Silicon Valley or an equivalent is simply not going to look at them in the same way. So I actually think we've got a huge perception challenge. And again, it goes back to a lot of the work we're doing and the work we do with the founders is to battle that perception. It's the reason why Baobab looks and sounds so polished. We don't go like, how can we compete with another African DC? Our references are Y Combinator, Berkshire Hathaway, things like that, Sequoia. We're looking at those companies and saying, how can we position ourselves, communicate, and actually run our businesses at that standard? That is ultimately what we're aiming for. And we're doing that to battle the perception of African DCs. Similarly, in our accelerator, the reason why, and I'm pretty confident in saying this because I've attended so many demo days from TechCrunch to you name it. I mean, no, sorry, not TechCrunch.
Startup grind as well.
Startup Grind, and a couple of the other really big ones.
Wow.
The quality of the pitches is not that great. The quality of the decks is not that great. They're fine. But if an African founder had to pitch at that level, they're automatically disadvantaged. Do you know what I mean? Compared to that sort of Western founder. So it's the reason why we make sure our founders' decks are designed at an expert level, why their demo day pitches are highly rehearsed, why they're prepared for Q&As, why they know how to answer every tough question. Because we are constantly battling a misperception of what it means to build a company on this continent. So that to me is the number one challenge. If we had to look at like, what are they doing wrong? It's like, well, maybe they aren't battling that perception hard enough. Maybe they aren't being bullish enough. Maybe some founders are being a little bit apologetic about where they're coming from and that sort of thing. The other challenge we face, I would just say one more, is that it takes longer to do everything in Africa for a variety of reasons. So like if you're building a startup, to get the same traction that you might get in Europe or in America, it takes a little longer. It takes a little longer to engineer an exit. It takes a little longer to find the right talent. So that's the other aspect of it, is that the expectation is maybe not well aligned to how African startups should be performing. But that's also being challenged, right? We've got your money points, we've got your time banks, your Yokos, we've got guys building unicorns and shooting the lights out. And so I'm very confident that it's not going to change. It is changing. We have investors attend our demo day and they're like, damn, like these guys were really well coached. They were really well prepared. They know what they're talking about. They know how to describe their products and what's good about them. And that to us is like, initially one of the ultimate goals. So yeah, that's kind of my take on all of that.
So yeah, that's just to reiterate, that's perception. Just due to a number of historical and current factors.
And expectation.
And then an expectation. Okay.
Yeah.
Perception
and expectation. Those are the two big ones.
Yeah. That's true. And you actually, thanks for guiding me there. Because I think, the inputs I would have thought are going to be, which is wrong of me now that I'm thinking of it, technical. Like the technical build. It's like, oh no, we're doing this wrong. Or capability build, because it's better out there, which is not correct.
It's
and
not,
like I am, I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here. So thanks for that.
You're an African entrepreneur. You're working with a startup at the
100%.
moment and all of that. So you know better than anyone. It's not the case. It's absolutely not the case. Like,
no, it's not
our
the case.
best
It isn't
portfolio
at all.
companies, the founders of those companies, like the really strong technical guys, they could work at any company in the world. And actually, oftentimes, they've come from Visa. We invested in a founder last year who interned at NASA. Like these guys are incredibly smart. They're as smart as the smartest people anywhere in the world. I don't think it's a skills issue, a competency issue, a technical challenge at all. These guys are, these founders are brilliant. Some of the smartest people I've ever met anywhere in the world. It's the opportunity that's missing. It's like I said, the first check that's missing. The opportunity to connect with a Jay or with a me or with someone who's got a big investor network. It's opening the doors for them because they have all the ingredients already. And what I'll add to it is that they have something that Western founders do not have in the same sort of quantities, which is resilience. Africans are just tougher than almost anybody else. And it's not like big talk. We have to deal with so much more. Like if I have to look at myself as a South African, it's like, this is going to sound like a little silly, pithy example. But we had this thing called load shedding, which you know about, which your audience might not all know about. But basically, in South Africa, for almost 13 years, we had regular planned power outages, and I'm talking 3-4 times a day during working hours. So, like a small example would be, if I had to have a call with a client, I can't just rely on being able to do that at home, knowing the power is going to be on. It sounds crazy, but that is the kind of thing, and that's a small example. But they're far greater challenges too, and it's all those challenges that Africans have to face. That when they decide to start a company, man, they've got thicker skin. They've got a higher tolerance for dealing with bullshit. They've just got more resilience, and it's much harder to beat them down than a Western founder who's faced a minor setback and now they're going to shut down their, e-scooter startup, like,
Let's go a bit deeper then. You wanted to, you were alluding to the resilience factor and like some of the things that you were experiencing through load shedding. What story can you tell me around a African founder that changed your perspective around entrepreneurship in general, right? As you knew it.
Sure.
Like,
I think that I can highlight one or two examples. There's a theme though. When I think about what you're asking me, the thing that has really opened my eyes is how African founders, generally speaking, are solving real problems. Going back to the things I'm talking about, like load shedding, or the fact that so many Africans are unbanked, or that SMEs can't get access to credits. All of these very real challenges, which are the same challenges I mentioned about just being an African. These are actually the most successful startups are solving these things. And so what I found is, like, across the African founders that I've dealt with, what I'm always so impressed with is that for the most part, they are solving real problems for real people that they have experienced themselves. It's not like this opportunistic sort of mentality that a lot of founders have where they're like, oh, there's a wave or a trend.
there's a gap
Let
here.
me ride that. Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a gap in the market.
Exactly. Even if I've never experienced it or don't know anyone who's experienced it, a lot of them will be like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. Let me go whip out something unlovable in 72 hours. And it's that kind of mentality. So what's really changed my perception is like dealing with the founders we're dealing with, knowing that, for example, if you're a founder in Nigeria and you've got to get to a meeting, well, factor in traffic, my friend, like it's not a joke. It's not a joke at all, things like that. Like I said, reliable power is another thing, instability politically, socially, all of that kind of stuff. And despite all of these things, a lot of the founders we are investing in are succeeding. And so that has like really, really changed my perception on entrepreneurship. And again, going back to the point of just like toughness, mental toughness, it's reminded me to just be mentally tougher, like, and if you can break through and break out of your markets, if you are mentally tough, once you get into an easy market with a big middle class or a big, addressable market, depending on what your product is, well, then it's going to be a lot easier for you. You've already developed that resilience, that mental toughness. So like, I'll give you like a small example of a company. So we invested in a Nigerian inventory financing business called Hadi Finance. Bidemi Adebayo is the founder. And, she started that business because, in Nigeria, like a lot of Africa, a lot of the food, a lot of FMCG is sold by informal traders. That is the backbone of retail in countries like Nigeria. It's informal traders. Bidemi's mom had a store, outside their house. Like we know in South Africa, it's a very common thing. If you drive through certain neighborhoods or whatever, the tuck shop, the barber, the whatever, the electrician at the house, right? So her mom had a food business, okay, selling groceries and that sort of thing. And she saw firsthand growing up how difficult it was for her mother to grow her business because she had to rely purely on her own cash flow to buy goods and to grow the business. She couldn't get access to something like inventory financing, to really help scale the company because she might not have had the credit history. She might not have, the business might not have been banked in the same way that it might be in like a developed country or whatever it might be. So she's looked at this thing. She's experienced it from day naught, from as early as she can remember. And what has she done? The moment she had the opportunity to start a business, She found the right co-founder, the right team, and she's solving that problem for Nigerian SMEs. So like, one
Sure.
example, and there's just so many of them in our portfolio, but this is the thing that really stands out to me about, African entrepreneurs.
Nah, man, you guys are doing good work, man. I'm getting shivers on my back. I'm like, yo, I want to get involved.
Listen, man,
I want
this
to
is
get
the thing that I
involved.
said. It's like when I said you got to do something that you want to do most days. This is the kind of
Yeah,
thing
no, I can get it.
that gives me the motivation and the fire to do this. To want to do this almost every day.
Yeah, no, I can believe it, man. Like, yeah, congrats. You're doing such good work. But $100K dollars, what does that actually mean for somebody in Nairobi, Cape Town, Accra? Like, what does that mean? $100K
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah. Look, I'll start by saying $100,000 in Africa goes obviously a lot further than it might in the States. A Y Combinator is investing $500,000. Obviously, they are the biggest accelerator on the planet. But $500,000 doesn't go as far in Silicon Valley. If you're hiring talent that's living there, they've got higher rent, they've got higher living expenses. I just looked at talent as one example. So the 100K goes quite far. And what founders do with it is kind of a myriad of things. But the main things are typically around product development and talent. That's usually where most of the money is going for the companies we're investing in. We are highly encouraging of founders putting product above everything else, really, because going back to the point I was even making about Reflector, good work is going to get you more good work. And if you build a great, if you're a founder, good work means building the best product that you can possibly build. So we want our founders to invest in their product first and foremost. And obviously, to build products, you need talent and exceptional talent. And so we want to make sure that they've got the right kind of budget to attract top talent, So that's where we kind of see most of the money going. But the one thing is that I really want to stress is that we are not prescriptive at all about how a founder spends their budget. We don't take a board seat on our companies either. Our whole attitude is that if we've invested in you, that is already our vote of confidence. That is already our trust in you. We are investing in human beings more than anything else because we're investing at a pre-seed stage. So typically the traction isn't like amazing. We're not investing in a company because they're doing 100K MRR. None of them are at a pre-seed stage.
Yeah.
We're investing in them because fundamentally we believe in the product and the business case, but equally or even more, we believe in the founder. We believe with the person that we've been talking to for these last few months and that we've met with and we've gotten to know as human beings beyond just their careers and their CV and their pitch. And so we try to carry that philosophy all the way through. So when you've got your check, and our checks are conditional, by the way, like a lot of accelerators and stuff like that will only give you a check at the end of the accelerator and, if they like you, kind of thing. That is the business model of a lot of VCs. We give you the cash all up front. And then we start the accelerator and we go, you've got the money. Let's do this thing, guys. Let's not waste time. Let's build this company quickly and well and distribute it properly in front of the right talent, investors, and customers. So that's kind of where we see a lot of the funding going. So to kind of like put a bow on it, what can 100K do for a pre-seed African founder? It can take you from like, pre-seed to superstar. It really can. It can catapult you,
Wow. You guys are doing things differently. Your playbook is totally different. Yeah, no, it is. Like I've been involved in like startup grind, heavy chef, all these different ecosystems. So I hear a lot about other startups that went through, and then you sort of see like, whoa, you in the startup, now you not. What happened? Like, So I just listening to how you've shared a lot of what you do. It also shows, I think, you've been part of those ecosystems, so you know exactly what's going to work for you and your company and your playbook. Like particularly where you're like, we don't prescribe to how you use the money. Like use of funds is like a huge thing, right? It's a limiter. Where you're in the you're in the driver's seat. You see, oh my word, I need to fly to London today because I've just met someone at a event and I think he's gonna get me my first client. How do you explain that to your board? Like, who just sort of met you? How do you explain that? Like, you can't.
Exactly. And we don't want smart
it's
founders.
intuitive. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't want smart founders jumping through these artificial hoops, you know? And the one thing that most investors will never admit is, or let me put it like this, most investors think they know better than the person running the company, which I view as a highly arrogant position to take for a whole variety of reasons. And one of the biggest reasons is that most investors have never built a company in their life. They've never fired people. They've never deployed a product. They've never dealt with a bug, you know, when they've launched something. They've never had to deal with an angry customer per se. And this is not a way to rag on the space that I'm in. I have enormous respect for so many of my peers, but that is actually the status quo. You know, you've got career investors. I see career investors like career politicians, you know, career politicians who have never had skin in the game. They've been sitting and making laws and sitting in nice boardrooms and wearing fancy suits their entire career. A huge proportion of them have never dealt with the issues that they're campaigning on. They can talk a very big game, but they haven't experienced it. And it's why, you know, traditional politics is dying. And it's also why I believe so many traditional VCs are having to pivot so hard and change their model, because they're realizing it's not enough to think you're the oracle and sit on your, sit on Mount Olympus and talk down to founders. You know, you either need to know what's going on, or there need to be people in your team who've been there, built products, sold businesses, acquired businesses, you know, to give that really valuable advice and to be a valuable partner, I think is the important thing. And one other thing, Jay, I want to just quickly touch on, because you made me think about it, is like, when you mentioned that we're doing things differently, honestly, we are trying. We really are trying. And it's not to do things differently for the sake of doing things differently. It's because we find that a lot of the conventional status quo ways of investing, running an accelerator, just don't work. And we are trying to be a better partner to the companies we invest in, which is why we're constantly challenging that. And to go even further back, just to kind of to do a throwback to a comment from earlier, like I mentioned, I kind of always seen myself as a little bit of an outsider in a good way. That's also true of almost our entire company. Like our co-founders, Tom and Toby, you know, these are guys who decided that they want to do venture investing in Africa when all their peers were going and working at big banks or joining European VCs or accelerators and things like that. They're like, no, we want to go the path less traveled and do something really, really important. And I think that's an attitude that we share in Baobab. We're like, we're going to be different, again, not for the sake of it, but because it's actually necessary to shake things up, you know?
Yeah. No, I love it. It's almost like, to be great, you don't have to be better. Sometimes you just have to be different, right?
Yep, 100%.
Because, you know, when you're at that level of understanding what it takes to be better, yeah, you run fast, you're disciplined and all these things, but it's that difference that's like, oh my word, did you just see the fact that he or she did that? No wonder they're the best.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
you know,
exactly.
So I think,
And
yeah,
it's
no,
competitive.
I commend you. It's nice.
It's an ultra competitive world we're in, of course. And so we're not going to succeed in the long run if we just in everyone's wake and kind of copying, you know, the people on our
Yeah,
level. If we're going to
one up
copy
you, yeah.
100%, if we're going to copy anyone, like I said, we want to copy the companies we want to grow up to be, not the companies who are quote unquote on our level, you know?
Exactly. So you get the 100K. Now you make a mention, you go through your accelerator and you said, come, let's build this thing quickly. Right? Let's go up and running. Let's get going.
Yeah.
What do you think about speed in the African context? Does it kill or save startups?
It's such a good question. And interestingly, just yesterday, I was listening to a talk with Sir Johnny Ive, who's the guy who designed the iPhone. He's the guy who designed Apple's whole look and feel of their products, really. He's probably the most famous industrial designer in the world today. And he was asked the same question. And I was thinking a lot about it. He was basically saying that building things fast for the sake of building them fast is not necessarily a good thing, and it's not necessarily a virtue. What you need to add on to that is you should try build the best quality product as quickly as you can, not just try build a product as quickly as you can. And that doesn't mean to build a perfect product, because we all know that you need to get into market, get feedback, iterate on your product, and that's the way it goes. But you don't want speed at the expense of quality. That's what I firmly believe. And so in terms of the African space, they have the same time challenges, I would say, that a founder really anywhere has. If you've got a good insight, if you're starting to build a business in a certain space, guess what? Copycats are going to pop up very, very quickly. People are going to see what you're doing, and they're going to come try to do the same thing. And a lot of the time, they're going to beat you. If your product isn't good enough and it's not being delivered to the market fast enough. So I would say that I don't think there's necessarily a unique aspect to the speed conversation for African founders, but that I think in general, this whole thing of build fast and break things, it's become a catchphrase, as VCs love, because then it's something to talk about on LinkedIn, So so the speed important, with the caveat that you build in the best product you can in the time frame, kind of thing. Quality shouldn't be sacrificed.
I love it. Okay, cool. So specificity, yeah, that's
Yes.
key. Yeah, specificity, I like it. I learned something there too, because I thought your answer might have been different.
What did you think?
But
I'm curious. What's your take on it? What did you think I might have said?
I just thought, it was gonna be more of a case of, because access to funds is not as readily available, there needs to be a caution around the speed, right? And that also causes the mentality on how you build and who you build with and when you build, right? So that's what I was, because the input is, wait, like this, it should never feel like it's this $1 is everything. But
Sure.
it's the truth. It is the truth.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna get another 1.8. You're not gonna get another 100,000. So I feel that constraint will also create more creativity around the planning, the timing,
It does.
the who, and the what, right? And that is it's a natural constraint, which I think is beautiful, but takes time. So that's sort of how I would have seen it. Yeah. Versus in the US, like I know in the US and Europe, like the €1 here and the €1 in Europe is different, because I can go and be like, flip, let me just spend this, but I could walk home. Like a simple example.
Yeah,
is like,
I know, it's such a good example. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah.
I could spend it here and I could walk home.
Yeah.
But not in
100%. 100%. It's a really good example. And I'll just add a little comment to that. This whole thing about how founders are using their money. Founders have to live, okay? Yeah, we don't want them to be using their funding to live extravagantly. That goes without saying, but they have to live. They've got to pay rent, they've got to eat food, they've got to put fuel in their car, all of that kind of thing. And like the old school Silicon Valley thing is, you should eat noodles and share an apartment for a year. And yeah, that's cool. If that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But end of the day, you still got bills to pay, and you've probably got, in many senses, the bills might be lower, but you've got more expenses to cover. You got a family to look after. We know, in African communities, there's often more codependency, people living with you, all of that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting one, and we don't want our founders to be so strapped for cash that they can't live, because what happens is then they take up a side hustle, and then they're distracted, and then they're not building their business. And so it's actually a weird thing. If you go overly prescriptive and you're like, whoa, you're paying yourself a salary that we think, with no context, is too high, what's going to happen? If they pay themselves a lower salary, they've still got the same bills to pay. So they're going to start freelancing or doing some work that takes them away from what they should be building.
Sure. Yeah, that's a deep one. That is a deep one.
Yeah. It's real,
but
real
it's real
talk, man. People, exactly.
Yeah, that's real talk. But segueing, or let's go back to speed, right? And the technology has allowed for a lot of people to become entrepreneurial enterprise, right? And you mentioned Lovable, right? So that's an AI tool. I think it would be great if you could explain what Lovable can do
Oh.
and what it can't do.
Mhm.
But you made a recent post where you were like, your product is just an AI wrapper,
Yeah.
is the new VC slur, right? So
Yeah.
in Africa where, data is sparse, infrastructure is patchy, like what do you think about integrating AI into product development without like, the fluff, like, Lovable
Mm.
and all this stuff? Like what's your thoughts there?
Well, it's funny. Like I should have actually touched on this a bit earlier, because AI is now like the under sort of the underlying thing in every topic, whether it's speed, whether it's hiring, whether it's what you can build. So to give the quick context to start with, Lovable is a
Mm.
platform where you can build apps through text prompts. And it's really at the sort of pinnacle of this term vibe coding. And vibe coding is basically to say people who don't know how to code properly can just build products through these epic tools where you can just use text prompts like a chat GPT and it'll spit out a usable product. It is extraordinary. It's honestly one of the most amazing things I've seen in my entire life. And what it's allowed is that it's allowed for non-technical people to build technology products and fast. I heard a stat, and you might want to fact check this, but it's something like I think it was something like 50% of the products built on Lovable were built. Sorry, 50% of the products on Lovable that do $10,000 MRR or more were shipped in 72 hours. Like, let that sink in. 10K MRR, you spend 2 days essentially on core product development. Okay, like that is an extraordinary change. That's it's
Wow,
magic,
that's
truly.
crazy.
Yeah. So what it
Wow.
means is that kind of going back to something you mentioned earlier, like how far does that 100K go? Well, not just for African founders, but for everyone, 10 times further than it's ever gone before. You can now deploy agents to do the jobs of junior employees. You can now do product development at a fraction of the cost with vibe coding platforms. You don't need to hire copywriters. You don't need to have a fully fledged marketing department. There are HR legal tools that are doing the work of candidate attorneys. So $100,000, a dollar has never gone farther than it does in 2025, and it's only going that way. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that changes the playing field, because tech is no longer being gate kept by engineers, which it has been since
Mm,
the 80s.
mm.
And marketing guys like me can go build a product now if I've got a good idea and I've got the right drive, and I can go compete with someone who studied computer science at Harvard.
Mm, mm. Now that's no, you're right, bro. Like I've played a little around Lovable. I think I saw on Instagram, Lovable was the fastest company to hit 100 ARR
Yeah,
in the world, the fastest time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like their curve, I think they've done it in under a year and a half. I think it's just
I
like
was good. I think it is an under a year that they got there. I might
yeah,
be wrong,
I
but
think
it's
yeah, I saw the graph, but I think it's just under a year, and that's crazy.
yeah,
That is absolutely mad.
it's
Um,
completely nuts. It's magic, man. Like the other, and I don't want to like get off the rails too much here, but just on this topic of what AI can do for businesses and founders and entrepreneurs. Like m- someone like me whose main background has been in marketing and brand communication strategy, I can achieve already 50 times as much as I ever could with a team, 5 or 6 years ago, purely because of large language models. I can generate like the core elements, or my team can generate the core elements for a post on ChatGPT using the most readily available AI image software. I could have a conversation with ChatGPT like it's a senior strategist who has read every book on positioning that I've read, all of that kind of stuff. So every sector, every founder, anyone who's in business. I mean, this is the moment. This is a fantastic time to be alive and at this stage in our career, or
hundred
depending on who you
percent.
are, the most terrifying time in history.
It's true. Reed. I think it's Reed Hoffman, CEO
Yeah.
of LinkedIn. said, this is the perfect time to just get involved either in trying to build this AI product or a company that is focused on building or integrating and using AI products, because one, you'll get involved, get your hands dirty, because it's the internet age where like the internet golden rush age for you to go and, build a prosperous life and create something of value, because there's this technological wave that you should get involved
Yeah.
in. So I think, yeah, you're right. I think it's a very, very exciting time. But like
Yeah.
most things I use, it's scary to jump on that wave. I don't know how to surf, they have to play on the
Yeah.
analogy.
Yeah.
But just get involved.
100%.
Yeah, Yeah. Um, almost it's been a great conversation, but I've got a few more deep ones. We got a little bit
Yeah. Go
deep
for it,
there, and
man.
I'm
Let's do
I'm
it.
I'm I'm thinking a little bit like, like when it comes to ego, business is just people doing stuff with people. That's really it, right? Of course, there's this technological component to it, but then let's say you build a one-man business, then you're basically doing a lot of the stuff with yourself, which is still you're battling the ego. Um, and I was listening to a podcast where you made some references to the success of founders versus co-founders, like, single founders versus co-founders, and that, like, it's there's more success in having a co-founder, and you express it in such a
Yeah.
great way where, it's like, there's the technical and the complement of skills, but then there's just this like part where it's hard to build a business. You almost need a friend to like to confide in, when shit hit the fan, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but how do you help founders cut through the fluff around the technical part, and then also like this non-technical part? Like, how do you coach
Mm.
that? Like what does that look like
Mm.
in your world there?
Mm. Well, I'd say on the technical part, going back to the companies we choose, we want to fundamentally choose companies that know how to build what they're building. So,
You mentioned.
so yes, we guide them wherever they need the guidance. Like, for example, if they're entering a stage of product development that is, much more challenging than building their MVP, we can bring in people from our network to guide them, build out product roadmaps, or even our team to do stuff like that. That is quite a functional one. And so you bring in the expert, and the expert can guide the founder. Uh, on the interpersonal stuff, that is far more challenging. And that kind of also shows itself in everyday conversations. So, going back to the comment you made around solo founders versus co-founders, let me be the millionth person to say that it's going to be incredibly hard to be successful and to build a successful company. We all know this. Everyone bangs on about this. Doing it alone makes it unnecessarily difficult. Not just from a, like you mentioned, who's doing what perspective, okay? But from a shoulder to cry on perspective, from a person to
Oh,
vent to perspective, from a brainstorming and bouncing ideas and sense checking each other perspective, from a checking each other's ego perspective. And
mm,
so I've got this, uh, I say unsubstantiated theory because I don't know the statistics, but there's a lot of like these founder matchmaking service sort of things. And I've always been quite skeptical of those sorts of things because, like one of the founders, we've invested in a South African startup called Community Wolf. It's run by two brilliant founders, Michael Houghton and Nick Mills. And, I was having a chat with Mike and he says, choosing your co-founder is like getting married. And in fact, other than the person you marry, it is probably the most consequential relationship of your life,
your
if you're going to be
life.
building a business. And I actually agree with it because once you start building something with someone, now suddenly there's equity being split, there's effort going into it, there's sacrifices being made. And if you aren't completely aligned to that person, it's probably going to fall apart. And what I've always wondered with these like founder matchmaking services is how could you possibly put two strangers together over such a short period of time and ensure that there's that level of trust and that type of bond in the relationship? Like the best companies we've invested in, The co-founders found each other organically. They were like brother-in-laws, or they studied together, or they were mates from school, or they worked at the same company together and suffered the same challenges, or they met at a mixer or something. But it was organic. And I think that founders should probably think about their co-founder relationship like
Like a marriage.
whatever your biggest relationship in your life is, your partner. It's not that different. And in fact, while you're building your startup, you're going to be spending a lot more time with your co-founder than your partner. You're going to be pulling all-nighters and 7-day work weeks and 9 to 9. I don't know what, I saw an article the other day, like in China, I think it's called 996. You work from 9 to 9, 6 days a week. That's like becoming the norm in China. And that's what it's going to be if you're serious about building a successful startup. So basically, you've got to have a founder that you've got a true understanding, bond, and share the values with, like your partner, like your real life partner.
Sure. I love it. I agree. I totally agree. And I can see in your eyes that you're excited about what you do, right? And how you do it and who you do it for. So if I gave you $1 billion, right, today,
Ooh, we'll take it.
1 billion. Okay, that's good. I love that. That's a true entrepreneur. Give me the money. Give me the money. What would you do with 1 billion tomorrow as Klyne for Baobab and its different way of building the African startup ecosystem? What would you do? Don't think about Toby and your other Klyne. Like,
sure.
Hey guys, I'm bringing this 1 bill. What? You've got this? Yeah, this is what I want to do with it.
So I would do two things fundamentally. Firstly, I'd set up a huge fund. Let's say $500 million into a fund. And I mean, maybe more, maybe 80% of it goes into a fund. Okay. Because back to the thing I've been banging on about, that's the biggest challenge, right? Making sure we can cut checks for good founders and do follow-on rounds and help them scale and that sort of thing. So that's quite an obvious one, of course. Okay. Money to invest. But the other thing that I would do, which I feel our continent is lacking, are physical places for founders to get together, to interact, to gather, to build things. And so what I would do with the rest of that cash is I would build Baobab network hubs all around the continent. And I'm not just talking about the big four. I'm not just saying South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, etc. I would want to build hubs in places like Cameroon, in places like Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, places where we've invested, where we've found extraordinary founders and where we believe there are so many more. But besides the access to capital, they don't have the places to gather where they can learn from each other, find talent, collaborate, find partners, all of that sort of thing. So I would want to take a big chunk of that $1 billion and build physical institutions, landmarks for African founders that they can gather in, they can build in, that enable them to create the companies that they want. That's the take people offline, bring them together.
Mate, you should come back to. I think this is a pivotal. That's a pivotal moment. Like, I could see that you doing that because like that's needed, mate. Like, so I'm gonna actually come back to you a year from now. I think you might be building these out because I think that's a brilliant idea.
That's the
and
vision.
It just goes to where.
Sorry.
Go for it.
No, I was gonna say like that is the vision, right? Like as our core business model, we're gonna continue raising our fund and raising more funds down the line. That kind of goes without saying. But the dream for me would be also walk into a space in an African city where tech talent didn't have a home and it's now their home. Baobab is their home. That to me is like, cool, I'll die a happy man. I've done something meaningful with my career and my life,
Yeah. So I've got a last question, which segues so well into Klyne walking into Kampala, Uganda, Baobab Network facility, right? He walks in and he's got his, he's actually taking his boys who've come from Hilton for an internship, right? He's like, come, boy. And they walk in and they see, wow, they can sort of see their dad's legacy through the eyes of the people sitting on these VR glasses, right? Like building stuff through like VR glasses, right? And you walk in with your son, with your twins, and I think the other one is the other one younger. The twins are
Older.
yeah. So the other
Yeah,
one's
the
probably
twins are the babies.
older. He's
Yeah.
he he's
Yeah.
probably like he's a fund manager.
He's like
He's a
David
fund
Trick if
manager
these
already.
oaks are in grade 8 sort of situation. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's
Mm.
already like he's in the UK doing his thing. So these two come in,
Yeah.
and they sit down, and you're about to do a speech, right?
Mhm.
To about 15 of these entrepreneurs. What would you tell these entrepreneurs from a mindset upgrade for tomorrow? What would you tell them as founders on the continent to upgrade their mindset for tomorrow? What would that speech or that advice look like?
I think my key message would be, don't build a good company for Africa. Build a world-class company. Act like a big company and think like a big company all the time. Don't become a product of your circumstances. Just because you're not in Silicon Valley and there aren't 100,000 startups at your doorstep, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be building one of the best companies in the world. The world is not actually flat. I don't want to be accused of being a flat earther, but things have been flattened in that, we're living in like this borderless world where people travel, people are online, we exchange ideas, we exchange work, talent, money, all these sorts of things. My one message would be to the founders at Baobab's hypothetical campus would be, don't build a good company for Africa, build a world-class company, build the best company you can imagine. That would be the number one thing I'd want to impart on them.
Whew. And that's a wrap. That is a wrap. Klyne, I have to, dude, this was such an amazing conversation.
Oh, man.
Super insightful. Like I said, you've got this beautiful way of communicating, which
Thank you,
one
bro.
is an art, but then with that communication style is overlaid with an immense knowledge base that also translate into wisdom, just that
I
like closing
appreciate
off that
that,
I
man.
really
That
love.
honestly means so much to me, Jay. And thank you so much for having me, man. I mean, you can tell like I'm deeply passionate about this stuff, dude. I live and breathe it.
100%.
It's an everyday thing, and I love being able to talk about it. So this has honestly been such a joy for me too, dude. I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the chance to
Yeah,
chat about these things.
no, 100%. And like, I'm going to make sure that in any way I can, amplify what you guys are doing. But how can people, get in touch with you?
Yeah.
And in closing off, what is the most exciting project that you're working on
Mm,
going into the
mm.
rest of the year?
So first one, if you want to get in touch, add me on LinkedIn, send me a message. Or if you're interested in funding, apply on our website. We take applications all year round. So thebaobabnetwork.com, you'll see the apply buttons everywhere. Don't be shy. So that'll be the first one. What was the second question again?
And then what's the most exciting project that you're working
Exciting
on
thing
right
we're
now?
working on. Yeah, man. So the thing that
Yeah.
really, really excites me is we are building something inside the business we call Baobab OS. We've talked a little bit about it publicly, but essentially we're building like our own operating system to help us make better investments and help give better support to founders. And it's an AI, fundamentally an AI product. And that's the thing we've been working on for about a year now. We used it to make our last cohort of investments. We've been using it internally for quite some time. But what's been really interesting to us is that when we show people this product or talk to people about this product, they're like, how can we buy this thing? Like, we want it for our VC or our accelerator or our private equity company or whatever it might be. So that's the thing that is incredibly exciting. One of the things that's incredibly exciting for us right now. And we're also raising a fund at the moment, which is also I don't use this lightly, but I think it's going to be game changing for African founders. So can't say too much about the fund at this stage, but you'll be one of the first people to know what's cracking there when we are ready to talk about it. But those are the things: building technology of our own and building a massive fund to to find the next best African founders, on every corner of the continent.
All right, Klyne, thank you so much. And I
G,
love the work you're doing for Africa. Thank you, man.
thank you, bro. I appreciate the time.
Go well.
Thanks so much, Jay.
Yes.
Cheers, bro.
Yeah. Cheers. Bye.